This is a film about rough terrain unicycling. Hello, I'm George Peck, and I'm going to show you the few basic skills and equipment you'll need for rough terrain unicycling. And then it's out on the road, so to speak, for a few rides close by. Why, you may ask, would anyone be interested in learning rough terrain unicycling? And what is rough terrain unicycling? By rough terrain, I mean any whole surface that isn't smooth, level, and wide. So rough terrain would be anything that isn't. That could mean steps, boxes, railroad tracks, rocks, curbs, slabs of tilted cement, mountains, snow and ice, dry creek and river beds. Just about anything that's not a gym floor probably qualifies as rough terrain. I got into unicycling 6 years ago because I read that it's good cross-training for shortboard windsurfing. I also knew that Stein Eriksen, a great downhill skier and now coach, advocated unicycling as a cross-training activity for his skiers. Pretty soon I was having more fun cycling than I was windsurfing, mainly because I could cycle nearly every day. And when I have the time, not when the wind happens to be blowing. My experience with windsurfing has been that if I leave it for a year or so and cycle in the interim, I don't gain any windsurfing skills, but I don't lose any either. The constant challenge of cycling keeps me in shape and keeps my learning edge fresh. In the 50 years I've been on this planet, I've done to varying degrees: downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, whitewater kayaking, ocean kayaking, mountain biking, mountain climbing, and shortboard windsurfing. Certainly rough terrain unicycling doesn't have the glamour and the speed of some of these sports, but it also doesn't have some other things that they have, like high entry costs, the risk of injury, the logistic hassles, or the confluence of rare meteorological phenomena. You can cycle inside or outside, from your car or house. You can cycle winter or summer, rain or snow, mountains or beach, forest or city. You can unicycle virtually anywhere you have flotation, traction, and room to maneuver. Equipment costs are relatively low. An entry-level cycle will cost less than $150. Protective gear about another $50. This will get you started. Eventually you'll want to beef up the stock cycle, but more on that later. Maintenance is minimal. There are no chains, gears, cables, sails, lines, or car racks to deal with. Just throw the cycle behind the seat and off you go. If you're flying, break the cycle down and put it in a box. I never leave town without it, literally. No matter where I'm going, flying or driving, I take the cycle with me, and I always cycle wherever I go. It's a go anywhere, do anything machine. So why unicycle? Because it's fun, provides an endless variety of challenge. It's adaptable to virtually any terrain, season, or weather. It's a good workout. It's good cross-training for other balanced sports, and it's relatively injury-free. Overall, I would say that rough terrain unicycling is a cross between mountain climbing and bronc riding. There are short, intense moves of inches that may take days and days to work out, and there are 100 yards of beach cobble that will turn you every which way but loose. So let's turn now to the basic skills and equipment you will need to get started to enjoy and explore rough terrain unicycling. Basic rough terrain skills are riding standing up, hopping, rolling over obstacles, jumping, and wheel walking. In rough terrain, you will ride standing up over the saddle most of the time. Ride with one or no hands on the saddle. With the hand on the saddle pulling up and legs cranking down, tremendous torque can be exerted at the wheel. This technique can be used to negotiate hills, both up and down. Hopping is a very useful technique and one used frequently in getting over terrain without rolling. Your butt is over the saddle, hold the saddle with the hand or just with the legs. A 12-inch hop is max for me and the seat height I prefer. 10 inches is about max for me hands-off hopping. Whoops, well, some days are like that. Hands-off hopping is very useful because you can ad-lib a hop in there so quickly you'll be making save after save with this technique once it's yours. Rolling over obstacles is the most elegant way to get over small things, and the most noble way to roll is hands off the saddle. But you can roll standing up or sitting down, hands on or hands off. Jumping is a powerful technique that will open up lots of new territory. The rider is off the saddle and can compress right to the wheel going up or coming down. I'm up to 27 inches right now and will probably peak at 30 inches. A good jumper should be able to clear 50 to 60 inches. Wheel walking is a good technique and exercise for soft or steep terrain. This is because wheel walking provides a lower effective gear ratio than pedaling, and it makes the going more interesting when it's too easy to pedal. Related and useful skills are squats, squat riding, one-foot riding, and balancing in place. Squats are just deep knee bends on a cycle. Put your butt right down on the wheel, and it's good training and limber up for jumping. Squat riding is a real quad burner. Put a couple of 100 feet in at the beginning of a ride to get the blood moving. One-foot riding sensitizes the rider to the dead spot in the crank throw. At the pedal vertical position, there is very little torque available. A rider must learn to scooch through this position with deft weight shifts. One-foot ride whenever possible and learn both sides. Balancing in place is very useful technique. In rock and crud where you need a second or so to collect your balance, select a route and go for it. Also de-gear for jumping, since you need to carefully appraise matters before launching those tender body parts at rocks and logs and such. Protective equipment is vital to fun and injury-free riding. Gloves with palm pads are required. Always, always, always. Make the palm pad either as just a square palm insert or for the whole hand. To make an insert, lay the glove over a 3/8 foam pad, draw the outline and cut it out. Wrap it with athletic tape to make it stay in and feel better. If you're worried about fingertip protection, insert fingertip splints available at some drugstores. Elbow pads are required for rock and ice. Knee pads are mandatory for jumping. These pads are not truly adequate, but are the best of what is available. A back pad is always nice. This is a windsurf mass protector, but anything will do. A starter pad can be as simple as newspaper rolled up and taped or stuffed into a nylon bag. For big rock, I use a mass pad beefed up with a kitty litter pan bottom and another layer of foam. Shoes should be light, flexible, ankle high, and with some armoring in the toe. They must have a heel. These high-techs are just about right. Notice the wear on the ankle cuff, but for the shoe this would be coming out of my ankle. Choose a platform pedal as wide as possible. Since you'll be standing on the pedals most of the time, a broad pedal provides more comfort and control. Bear traps are too fragile and too hard on shoes. They'll wear out a shoe in 60 to 100 hours by cutting through at the arch. Use them only when necessary. These Shimano or Graphex platforms don't clean as well in snow and mud, but are good overall. They last well and don't wear out shoes as quickly. These seats are all covered with nylon-backed vinyl. This is a material commonly used in boat canopies. It is extremely tough, and even though you can't get it on a saddle shape without wrinkles, the wrinkles don't seem to matter. If you have a tender rear end, try a saddle with Spenco padding sewn in. It's more comfortable, but the resulting seat is much heavier. Tires take a beating, so put on a good knobby. Keep inflation pressures at about 60 pounds. Never let it get below 40. Lower pressures increase the risk of pinching the tube against the rim when there is a forceful contact with an edge. This will give you two nice little simultaneous holes in the tube and a walk home. Rough terrain cycles come in two flavors, 24-inch and 26-inch wheels. The 24-inch wheel with 5.5-inch cranks is standard. This is a fine jumping bike and good all around for rolling and hopping. The smaller wheel makes it easier to maneuver in big rock. The 26-inch wheel with 6.5-inch cranks is a better rolling bike. The longer cranks give 20% more torque, and the bigger wheel gives slightly more flotation. And because of the alloy cranks, this bike is actually lighter than the 24-inch cycle. The 26 is a rolling beauty. This would be my cycle of choice for doing forest and mountain trails where rolling is the primary activity, and a factory-studded tire is available for ice and snow work. Overall, however, the 24-inch wheel is the most versatile. This is the bike that goes with me everywhere. Well, so much for basics. Let's get going. Cycles are great for exercising the dog, and a toss or two is a good limber up. This road doesn't look steep, but it has a 25% plus gradient. I've ridden logging roads, mine haul roads, and firebreak cat trails in Alaska, Washington, California, Oregon, and New Zealand. And this is about as sustained steep as a road usually gets. Much less steep is this ramp at about 16%, but look how easily the cycle handles this grade. I mean, we're not even touching the saddle here. My experience with hills has brought me to the firm conclusion that the unicycle is the premier vehicle for going up steep hills. The reason is that the effective gear ratio for a wheel is as low as you will find on any mountain bike. Plus, the rider's weight and handhold over the driven wheel provide for better traction and more torque. However, a mountain bike can freewheel to the pedal level position for maximum torque, whereas a unicycle must roll through the dead spot of pedals vertical to get back to the pedal level position. Despite this handicap, the unicycle is still more capable at going up steep terrain. Eventually, the gradient here becomes too steep for either a mountain bike or a unicycle to roll. Plan B is hopping. Take my word for it, hopping is a lot easier on a unicycle than a bicycle. Curbs are great for learning to roll over obstacles. I love curbs. You can't spend enough time on curbs. The basic idea is to launch off the rear pedal and land on the forward pedal. This unweights the cycle, allowing it to lift. Plus, your weight coming forward and down adds some real authority to the torque curve. Stairs are not particularly friendly terrain, but they are everywhere, so you might as well learn to deal with them. Wear all pads on stairs. Stairs can be dropped step by step or rolled as a whole bumpy incline. The object in rough terrain cycling, as I understand it, is to take on the biggest obstacle around that you can handle. This picnic table is in the way, so let's give it a go. It takes me 2 jumps to reach the top. A good jumper can easily make it in 1. The other object of rough terrain cycling is to make things as interesting as possible. This berm is too easy to pedal, but it's a reasonable challenge to wheel walk. Now let's begin a forest trail. The terrain here will be typical of forest trails anywhere. Lots of roots, steep sections, and a few bridges and streams. Hills should be taken standing up without holding the saddle. You can get tremendous torque by getting as far forward as possible. Watch out, because this puts you at risk for a dismount out the front. The closer you get to the edge of the balance envelope, the quicker you'll go through it. But you have to be at the edge to optimize performance, so go slow. Get back momentarily for obstacles and scooch over them with your hips. All of which is a good trick while leaning way forward. It's a skill that will take time and sensitivity to develop. This hill has a stopper root at the top, which can be either rolled or hopped. It's more elegant to roll the root, but my pedal position didn't work out on this trip and I'm too lazy to ratchet to the best pedal position, so I'll just hop it today. When a hill is too steep for hands-off rolling, it's time to grab the saddle and start reefing. You can get so much torque reefing, it's easy to break a wheel loose. Use the torque carefully, bearing in mind the traction available. Again, stay as far forward as you dare, be flexible, ready to back off to start a bump, and thrust forward to finish it. Someday I may get good enough to roll this section hands-off. We come now to the inevitable stream and no bridge. The cycle does very well in water provided you can see the bottom. I have been in water to the top of the wheel, but generally avoid water above the bearings unless you like lots of maintenance. Rolling or sliding down rock or gravel berms is a matter of staying back, grabbing the saddle, and braking with lots of counter torque. In soft terrain such as sand or snow, turn the cycle down the slope like a snowboarder would carve turns. See, I told you steps are everywhere, but these particular steps are benign, so let's have some fun here. Going up 2 at a time is good jumping practice. Coming down 1 at a time, hands off, sensitizes the rider to staying in the balance envelope without holding on to the saddle. A desirable skill that pays off in general small rock work where you need both hands flailing for balance. Here is a good example of small rock. What makes this terrain difficult is that what you see is not what you get. The rock is loose and shifts constantly under the influence of the wheel. The preferred method of dealing with this stuff is to go slow and steady. Give yourself time to pick a route and to react to the unpredictable. Go directly over a rock whenever possible rather than around or between. A rock under the wheel is not nearly as squirrely as a rock being shouldered aside. Logs, pipes, or poles, like steps, are just about everywhere. Be careful. Before doing cylinders, make sure they are stable. Test for traction. Creosote poles are very slippery in hot or wet weather. These logs are good practice for forest work because some trails will have only logs for bridges. Now let's try some tilted stuff. These are dream slabs to work. They are stable, rough, and only moderately tilted. Route selection is still important, however. Balancing in place and hopping are the component skills. The only limit to what can be done in this type of terrain is adequate tire friction and room for the slope side pedal. A dedicated rider with good skills could do some serious rock work. Whole mountains would seem to be possible. Our route brings us out onto the beach. This particular section of small to medium rock provides endless fun. No route, no day is ever the same. This is where curb practice pays off. Rolling over to 6 to 8 inch ledges is mostly all that's happening. Balancing in place is important to slow and deliberate progress. Medium-sized rock provide good hopping grounds. Hopping is a fun skill, but work up to it gradually. Always test for traction and stability first. Taking off and landing from ankled rock is more difficult. Ease into the skill. Eventually, the beach turns into what I call big rock. I should be wearing a helmet here, so should you. No new skills here, just dancing with bigger rocks. Remember, what you're seeing is not about what I can do on a unicycle, but what you can do. As long as there is traction and room to maneuver, a unicycle will take you anywhere your skill allows. There are two things to know about rough terrain unicycling. First, the learning curve can be shallow and long, but not to worry. Joy in unicycling comes from the daily exercise and mental and physical challenges it provides. The improvement achieved on any particular day or plateau is less important than just doing it. Second, cycling is a grabber sport. Once you get into it, it won't let you go. Cycling gives you a chance to get outdoors virtually anywhere, anytime, get a workout, and meet a host of challenges. Like rock climbing, cycling doesn't always require a big chunk of territory to be interesting. But the cycle is no slouch at putting 10 to 15 miles a day on a forest or mountain trail. And it is compact enough to give you a good workout indoors. When you ride, no matter where you ride, always wear the appropriate padding. Currently available stock unicycles are not up to long-term use in rough terrain. These are a few of the dozens of axles I have broken from these machines in some 3,000 to 4,000 hours of riding, and bent cranks, and broken pedals, and seat posts, and seat covers. To put together a bike robust enough for sustained rough terrain work, some stock components must be replaced. The most important is the axle. The only two types of axles that have survived my riding are the Philwood four-shoulder taper and the Bullseye hollow splined axle. A reinforced seat post and seat will withstand the fiercest of reefing, and a nylon vinyl seat cover will give reasonable wear. Put on the biggest platform pedals you can find. The addition of these components will reduce failure rates to an acceptable level. Otherwise, it is simply not safe to venture into terrain like this without reliable components. especially axles. A broken axle is fairly catastrophic in any event, and this is not the place to find out more about it. As your ability to extract more and more torque from the cycle increases, so will your ability to fatigue a stock axle to failure. Steep downhills, hopping, and small to medium rock work will cause stock axle failure in 100 to 200 hours. Count on it. So after you've burned out your stock axle in mild terrain, replace it with a Fillwood or bullseye axle or equivalent. Now it's okay to burn out a stock axle or two, but it's not okay to burn out yourself. Just remember that some people learn cycling skills very rapidly, and some people learn cycling skills very slowly. Even though I would classify myself more to the slow group, it hasn't diminished my enjoyment of the sport one bit. Don't let the apparent difficulty or lack of natural aptitude deter you. Get a cycle and get on it. Wear your pads and enjoy.